Well, awesome. Let's get started here. Thank you everybody for joining us. I'm Rob Bigelow, the Director of Civil Services at ATG. And the primary focus of this meeting is to discuss CAD management consulting and how to make it work to optimize your designs and business. So as any CAD manager knows, how much work that goes into creating, maintaining, and enforcing CAD standards and templates. And also you understand the importance to keep your standards efficient and your deliverables looking consistent. After all, this is your brand. And hiring a full-time CAD manager or moving your best designers from billable work over to managing the CAD standards, that can often feel like a disservice to the project revenue. And we hear about these challenges every day. And at ATG, it's our job to help you find solutions for that. And we're fortunate enough here to have Jennifer Schmitz at SEH lead the conversation on how they work through a lot of these challenges themselves and how ATG has been a valuable member, a partner with them through these processes. So thanks, Jennifer, for joining us. And if you want to just give a brief introduction of yourself as well as SEH.
Yeah, so I'm Jennifer Schmitz with SEH. I work out of our St. Cloud office. We're a multidisciplined engineering and architecture firm. We have approximately 30 offices and about 800 to 900 people with us. So I've been with SEH for about 20 years and have taken on the CAD role for at least the last 5 as their primary CAD manager.
Awesome. And we also have Kyle Groves and Jeff Haney, if you guys want to give a brief introduction for yourselves and also how long you've been working with Jennifer.
Hey everybody, my name is Kyle Groves. I have been with ATG for about 3.5 years now. I've been in the industry for about 6.5 years. With that, obviously I've been doing this most recently. Being a senior technical specialist at ATG involves a variety of things, but mostly I'm a CAD nerd and I do CAD management stuff. I help other people do CAD management stuff. I do a little bit of tech support and I do a lot of training. In fact, that's just what I was up to the minutes before we started here, giving a little training. Before I was working with ATG, I did about 2 years worth of environmental geotechnical design for solid waste projects and another year's worth of residential and commercial grading projects. So I've had a pretty broad exposure to a lot of different engineering topics, as well as different situations that we want to use Civil 3D to make life easier and better. I've been working with SEH pretty much my whole time here at ATG. And it has been really great, pretty much. It's been really great the whole time. No pretty much about it.
Fantastic. My name is Jeff Haney. I've been with ATG now for 15 months, doing all the things that Kyle does here. But with my experience overall with both engineering side, working in the industry and as a reseller, I've got 18 plus years experience, and a lot of my drafting and design stuff has been geared toward subdivisions, site designs, things like that.
Awesome. All right, well,
and
thanks.
With the SEH for about a year. So
Perfect. Thank you, guys. So we want to keep this kind of an informal conversation. I'm going to ask just a few questions through here, and you guys can talk about how you've dealt with these issues. So Jennifer, if you can explain to me where you were at CAD management wise originally before ATG and what first caught your interest in partnering with ATG.
Yeah, so originally we had lost our CAD manager. We had a CAD manager, and in the economic downturn, 2008 to 2010 range, we lost our CAD manager. So it was basically left up to those users to really maintain CAD standards. And I was one of those interested CAD users. I ended up attending a Midwest U event and really caught my eye about how much ATG and their staff knew about CAD standards and how they could help us out, how they could help us produce template upgrades. We found that our tech support was lacking with the current vendor we had, or our Autodesk reseller. So kind of how ATG could make a difference in that aspect. And we just decided to pursue a partnership and get the conversation started after that event.
Yeah, it's about, wait, I remember it.
Yeah.
So,
And it's, oh, go ahead, Kyle.
oh, no, I was just going to say, with all that preamble in place, Jennifer, so, getting started with ATG, what did that look like for SEH's perspective?
Yeah, so Kyle and his team basically came in and looked at our workflows, sat down and right next to us and looked at, how do we use the software? What do we use it for? What do our plans look like? What's our end result? We had a mountain of CAD manuals. So where do we get started with standards and how do we develop those so that they work for everybody instead of looking at a manual? It's just intuitive and how we can better work that workflow for everybody. So they sat down one-on-one with us, and then what we would do is analyze that process. They've made recommendations on how we could be more efficient or what processes we might do differently. And then the teams would sit down and collaborate on how we wanted that workflow to look moving forward.
Yeah, and it was a really great conversation to be able to come in and just not say, hey, SEH, you're doing things wrong. You don't know how to run a business. Clearly that wasn't the case, but to just say, hey, where are you now? Let's meet you where you're at and try and find ways that we can improve. Was actually, of all of the things that we've done, doing the workflow development has been my favorite part of what our relationship has been these last couple of years.
Yeah, I think so too. It's definitely improved us, and then that set the basis or the tone for nearly everything we've looked at after that. Just having those good solid workflows was really the baby step into developing our standards and maintaining our standards.
Yeah. Sorry, my screen is very busy right now. I'm trying to declutter it. Didn't have a lot of time to deal with that before we got
So I
on
know
here.
one thing, Jennifer, you mentioned before is that a lot of times users often felt like they were giving up a little bit, kind of going their own direction without a CAD manager. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so we kind of have those rogue people where, they're really powerful CAD users, and we had a lot of different, I would say we were working kind of in silos. We'd have this discipline over here, this office over here, and they'd have kind of their stuff that they're used to seeing because they work with the local municipality. But we didn't have maybe one unified SEH template or item or workflow. And what ATG was able to do is come in and really adapt that, listen to everybody, how they were using it, how they were producing what they needed to produce for end result, and then look at that. And we were able to train our users on the most effective workflow then. So not only developing the content around it and the one unified place to look for the content, but also basically provide the user base training so that we were all effective in what that new method was.
Yeah, and I think for anyone who's been following ATG for some time or me at ATG for some time, workflows have always been central to my CAD management philosophy. And so working with Jennifer and the team, it was really my first exposure to the concept that workflows and content are really hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. Because if you have a super cool workflow, we'll use survey databases and field to finish stuff as an example for that. It's great that you can just import codes right from your data collector and all of your line work is going to magically draw for you. But that workflow doesn't mean anything if you haven't gone through to set up your template content. You've got a description key set, you've got a figure prefix database. Much the same, it doesn't do you much benefit to build all of that content and then stop short of implementing the workflow for field to finish. Yes, you can get all your points to come in on the right layer, but you're literally clicks away and maybe a handful of hours of training your field staff on how to do just a little bit more work in the field so that those lines automatically draw for you. So if you have one but not the other, you're really not going to see the results that you want. And that's why developing your standards and your workflows in tandem is so important.
Yeah, go ahead, Jennifer, on that.
That was probably the biggest change we made was the survey database stuff, we went from having a code library of numeric, so knowing whether you were using a 700, whatever that is, to alpha, which is more intuitive and user intuitive in the field, where they shoot a Z shot or a bit edge shot, and it's coded to an alpha that characterizes with that. So the development of that was one of our first steps together.
Yeah, and I'd say like broadly at SEH, we have gone all in on categorical organization for things, which I think has worked out really great from both a management and a building perspective, as well as helping get users guided to the right content that they're looking for very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the main things we hear quite a bit is that there's a lot to consider when doing CAD management, whether it's beginning phases or just fixing something you already have. That's a hard part for a lot of people, is where to get started. How do you get started in this? So when you guys first got together, what were some of your considerations, your processes for setting yourself up for success? Was there a business process assessment? And I'll let you guys explore that.
Yeah, so I would say that ATG kind of led us there. We were kind of lost. I mean, they were very good leaders to guide us to the next step. What should be the next step? And, you know, how do we develop this so that we are efficient? We had to give management buy-in. We met originally after the Midwest U conference. I met with our IT rep, our director of IT, and also with the ATG sales reps. And that's kind of where the conversation started. And then it was getting Kyle and his team looped in to analyze our workflows and sit down with us. And really, I want to say ATG has been very flexible in the direction that we've headed, because they're willing to do as much or as little as you want them to, and really guide you with the appropriate resources to make it happen.
Yeah, and that's also part of it. So to explain a little bit more, Rob, that was a great lead-in question, but business process assessment. What is a business process assessment? How does that tie into building the relationship between ATG as a vendor and a provider and our client firms like SEH? So a business process assessment is effectively a brief paid proposal where we'll come in, we'll dig deep into what is the content that you already have. If you want us to look over maybe some CAD manuals, some other documentation, but just get familiar with the environment, get familiar with your people, and start asking the questions that we have found are important for solving people's problems. So like, what are your pain points? What tools are you using? What tools would you like to be using? You know, where does your growth factor into all of this? How supportive is your management structure toward investing toward all of this stuff? How much work would we have to do to develop that partnership and to get this stuff off the ground? So with that business process assessment, yes, it was, all right, SEH, we would love to get our hands on some of your files. We'd love to talk to some of your folks. And the result of that conversation, typically we'll scope that out as a written report with a closeout meeting. But the result of that conversation is a list of, this is where you are, this is where you'd like to be, here's how we're going to get there. It can be reasonably specific, it can be a little bit more broad, but ultimately that's the information that Jennifer then had to say, hey, management, I know it sounds like we're doing really great and we're firing off on all cylinders, but we've actually identified a number of different places where we could see some big improvements. And the thing about working with management, and Jennifer, definitely feel free to chime in on this, is that your leadership of your company, we're all here to make money. So why would we spend this money on something that is not directly related to a billable project? Why would Jennifer spend 30 to 100% of her time not billing on projects? She's one of our best CAD users. Like, she gets things done really, really quick and she can bill. Why would we pull her off of those tasks?
And that was really the desire, is not pulling a full-time person in-house anymore, and having our team be productive on that. And so by utilizing the standards that we put into place, I feel like our team works better, just because ATG is there to support our background information and our needs and wants, but we're still billable and productive and bringing in the project profit.
Yeah, let me jump in there. You made a couple points I wanted to touch upon here. So you guys were at a unique position here, unique perspective, because you started out working with ATG when you did not have a CAD manager. And then as you got a little bit further, you had a CAD manager, and I think you have a couple CAD managers at this point, and you're still partnering with ATG. Can you explain how it helped you guys in both situations to be able to work with Kyle and the team?
Yeah, so I think starting out, we didn't have that CAD manager. So really ATG kind of took that role, did the prospect analysis, gave us recommendations. And then kind of as users were showing interest, I would say, or asking questions about things, or if they had been a previous power user, we kind of brought them on board. And we have a CAD user group team that meets with Kyle on a regular, Kyle and Jeff for that matter, on a regular basis. And what we do is kind of vet out the internal requests that come in. Now, I think my role has really evolved over the last 5 years, especially because we need somebody to lead that team. So Kyle and I have formed that partnership, and then we rely on the rest of the team to really lead us through and guide us to the decisions that we make together. And I think that's where the flexibility comes in of whether you have a full-time CAD manager or whether you just have a team that supports it, they're flexible with that. They'll do as much or as little with the consulting as what your team wants them to do.
Yeah, and Jennifer, if you don't mind, could you share a little bit more about the organization of SEH's internal CAD management structure? So you and I and Jeff have our conversations, and you're kind of the leader of your team, but there's actually another level underneath that, if you want to use it's a hierarchy. So tell me a little bit more about like the broader efforts and how that's organized with SEH.
Yeah, so
tell the folks.
We kind of developed basically what we have. Our team that meets with Kyle weekly is really the power users identified from each region and a couple different disciplines. We have survey, we have CAD drafters, we have engineers from various regions that meet with Kyle on a weekly basis. And what that group does is vets through all of the template requests that come in or any kind of requests. Then we also have a CAD user support team, and that is basically a power user from each office. So we try to have representation of each office. We meet usually on a quarterly basis and kind of just go over the big picture of CAD, where we're going, what we want to see happen, maybe talk about initiatives of, there's new releases coming out. When are we implementing them? What does that plan look like? What kind of training are we lacking? So there's that umbrella as well. And then recently to touch users, I think in the last year, actually it's been going on about 1.5 years now, I do a little CAD workflow Wednesday, and I copy Kyle on his team every week. I send out, it might be a training link, it might be a little tidbit in CAD, just basically user outreach. So reaching those people who might not always reach out to everybody or know who to reach out to, it really provides that resource with a weekly reminder.
Yeah, and I'm a really big fan of the way SEH does this. I consult with multiple different firms, country, region, whatever. Jeff has his own firms that he's in charge of and helps out with this project. But I really like SEH's approach. I think it's very grounded and very realistic, where what we're trying to do is we need some people to just ultimately make a decision. This fits with the corporate CAD standards. This is something that we want to do, or this is superfluous. Maybe this is the content's all there, but it just looks a little bit different. It's not standard. We don't need it. But then you've also got a very dedicated effort to make sure that every single office has somebody that users can turn to when they have questions, when they have things that they need to get done, and that there is a representation when we get together in that bigger group. The way SEH is laid out, you guys have what, 500-ish users?
Yeah, my workflow Wednesdays go out to 386, but then there's also the casual users too. So sure. Yes.
But there's other firms, maybe they have fewer offices. So like if we have a representative in each office, it's like 4 people. So that doesn't really make sense. So yeah, and the the right sizing of all of that. But thank you, Jennifer, for sharing about that. With that institution, though, Rob's kind of lead into this part of the discussion was you didn't really start out with that much management support of your timesheet for doing CAD management tasks. This was, I'm passionate, I care about it, I want to be the change that I want to see in the company. So over time, the partnership with ATG was maintained, and SEH actually started investing more in the billability reductions for you and the people on like you that we were just talking about. Can you tell us a little bit more about the evolution for that and where you're at now?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started with this, I had to maintain a billable rate of around 90%. So 10% of my time was effectively billed to overhead activities, which would include CAD management. Over the years, how it's evolved is just 30% of my time or more is dedicated to CAD management now. So they really tend to see the progress that we made. They were seeing the return on their investment of when the users did come, and when we did form that partnership, we really saw the momentum pick up. So it was realized that we needed to invest more time, and we needed to dedicate some employee resources to really invest in this good product of our templates and our workflows. So I think there's been that realization over time to get that return on that investment.
Yeah, and Jennifer, that's a great lead into that. So you definitely were able to show management and prove the concept of this. But in the beginning, I know a lot of folk out there were asking that question of how do you get management buy-in on something like this? Because you know it's going to cost a little bit in order to get there. But what are some of the strategies you use to show that this is going to, you're going to have a return on investment? How did you get that management buy-in?
I think that that user desire and that user drive. So it was really like almost like a grassroots effort of the momentum that it picked up. So once we really introduced the ATG team to the SEH team of how comfortable they were and how they saw the tools evolving and how they saw the software evolving, how their needs were really being met. I think that really played into it, along with our leadership team was really, I want to say, they listened to our ideas. Their ears were all open. And along with the ATG sales rep, Kyle Johnson, he met with our staff, and really, I think just the success story that we saw evolve over time has really helped. Initially, it was really the IT and our practice center leader that were the management ears that I went to, and I said, hey, I attended this conference, you know, this is what they can do for us. These are the things, and they allowed us to pursue it. And so that really sold, or, you know, started our partnership together.
We've got some resources we can share with the rest of the group when we get toward the tail end of this conversation, but there are a couple of different strategies to expand on that. Jennifer, thank you for sharing about your experience with SEH, but it can be really tough to get that top-down approach, and a lot of times it is going to be more grassroots managed. Jeff, I know recently you've been working on onboarding some of our clients into more of an SEH type treatment. What can you share about how those other firms have managed that? How do we confirm this investment strategy into that?
Yeah, I mean, it looks different for a lot of different companies, but sometimes it's just a matter of, you know, the CAD manager, or not even a CAD manager, because some teams don't even have CAD managers. It's a group of people that, hey, we want our company to get better. So they reach out, we talk to them, and then we are on a call with, you know, the management team to be like, hey, this is what we can offer. And not necessarily what we can offer, but this is how we can improve your company, be more efficient and all that stuff. And usually after a while, they start understanding and buying into it. And, you know, of course, we have SEH here that makes it easy. So we've been down this road before. That they're likely, you know, we could share the information. Of course, we don't give away saying, hey, this is SEH, but we have that experience that we can rely back on, and they usually appreciate that.
Yeah, and I have noticed one thing, Jeff, sorry to cut you off there, Kyle. I had a question on on that about a large firm versus a small 10-person and below firm on how the methodology still works, whether it's a large firm or the small firm. Can you expound on that? I know
Yeah,
you've worked with both as well.
Yeah, I've actually been a part of a small group, and we thought, hey, we could do it ourselves and we don't need anybody because we only have 15 people. Well, when you have a CAD manager / the drafter, designer, whoever the case, they have that dual role. And lots of times you're doing your 10 hours a day working for the job, and then you have to do the other 5 hours after hours, you know? So by having somebody else to come in, it kind of relieves that pressure that, hey, I don't have to work 15-hour days to get everything done.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb, I mean, so we have a vested interest. We care about CAD management, all of us on this panel, and I'm presuming most of us attending this presentation. We have a vested interest in wanting to invest in all this stuff because we've seen how it gets when things are going good, and we've seen how it gets when things are going bad. From my perspective, I would recommend 1 to 2% of your company's timesheet should be dedicated toward CAD management for all of your CAD users. So if you're a 10-user firm, then that's, about 1%. Oh man, I can do math. It's like 200 hours per year for all of those people doing that CAD management. And so, or in raw numbers, that's 1 full-time CAD manager for every 50 to 100 users. Now, is that going to happen at most firms? Probably not, because management, revenue, billings, all that jazz. So the key here, whenever you're trying to convince your upper leadership, you have to be able to quantify. For a small firm, you still have lots and lots of those examples. So when was the last time that something went wrong on a project a couple of days before the deadline, and all of a sudden 2 to 3 people had to spend the whole weekend catching up for that? That was a mistake. That is something that theoretically could be prevented, and that's something that we can quantify. That's a pretty specific example, but I'm sure we can all dig one up. If not at this job, this firm, in the past, we've all been part of one of those breakdowns. So it's things like that. Was it a training issue? Was it a template issue? Was it a workflow issue? Why did we get there, and what are we going to do to not get there again? Any firm of any size is going to run into those issues, and that's the type of stuff that you're going to want to be interested in quantifying and putting a dollar amount to, so that you can convince the people who do hold the purse strings this is valuable to the company, and there are real costs to not addressing these issues.
Thank you. I want to just, I have a lot of questions here to ask, and we can talk all day. This is great. A couple other questions that I had for you is, how has ATG's team approach helped you guys out, Jennifer? I know originally you might have had like maybe Kyle and another person, but one thing we tried to do is give you the full team approach, and just working with Jeff and others, how has that helped you guys out?
Yeah, I think bringing Jeff and other members onto the team, it's really helped because it brings another perspective into our workflow and looking at the workflow process as well. Also, just basically spreading out the work so that Kyle doesn't have to all do it. Having multiple people knowing our standards. Jeff has held training sessions for us. Kyle has held training sessions for us. With the whole AEC collection for civil, we've brought in, your Dynamo folks, your recap folks, InfraWorks. It's kind of, we've utilized the whole team at ATG, and really having those knowledgeable resources and bringing in those people, Felix, when he knows subassembly composer, maybe he's your top guy on that. Just having those resources and those people who really know the intricacies of the software and the development of it has really helped. Unfortunately for Jeff, it was probably it's a steep learning curve to step into anybody's standards. So, it's a lot to throw at somebody, but it's really nice to have a whole team perspective on it.
And not just the civil side as well, but you were also using for Revit and the BIM side, correct?
Yes, so we have a Revit standards committee as well. So on the civil side, we meet with Kyle and his team, and then our Revit standards committee also meets with Philip and his team at ATG. And then we have what's called a technology advisory group, and we loop in, Dynamo, InfraWorks, Recap, those resources as well throughout the process when we need to. So having all those team members that are so knowledgeable, available, has been very instrumental.
Awesome. Jeff, you gonna say something?
I was going to say we thinking that whole team approach and stuff. I mean, we've also even had a chance to work a little bit with Dynamo with you guys. I mean, Brian did a pretty good job, at least showing some things off, I think. So, I mean, we have experience levels all across the board. So I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it's been
Indeed.
great because as Jennifer said, I don't have to do anything. I know enough to be dangerous about subassembly composer, but I don't have to master that software in order to be an effective ATG team member or to be an effective member of our client firm teams, because we have that experience, we have that breadth, we have that team approach. Even someone as knowledgeable as Jeff, who has been in the software for a very, very long time, Jeff doesn't know everything. I don't know everything. We all have our little areas of expertise and specialty, which is part of why folks are interested in bringing ATG in the first place, is because even you at your own firm might know all the things that you guys and gals need to do backwards and forwards. But once it's time to start branching out, or once it's time to confirm, am I doing this the right way? Is this something that other firms have already maybe jumped forward on, or they maybe have dropped this functionality? Is another way that we can step in and we can help out with that.
Another part of this I wanted to talk about is the trust that comes with it. Every company has their own ecosystem, and to be able to trust somebody from an outside firm that doesn't live right there within that company, how have you been able to build that trust between ATG and SEH and gain that trust with each other?
Yeah, so I think that first started out as a conversation with our IT team, and IT is always sensitive to bringing anybody else in or any other files or work sharing your servers or anything like that. And so the ATG approach was really, they changed our setup, so we were able to do a local drive setup. We're able to basically bundle that CAD package together whenever Kyle and team are ready to release it. And so in that aspect, as far as trust in file wise, it's been really good because it allows us to deploy it when we need to. Now, trust as factor of just basically trust between relationships here. I think Kyle and his team have just really clicked well with me and my team. Kyle knows endless amounts of trivia on Thursday mornings. And so, just getting to build those relationships. We've been out at AU together. We've done Midwest U events together. Just really, getting to know each other outside of work as well is a lot of fun. And really, by ATG providing a quality product in the past, I think that just builds the trust. So, they sent us over the initial concept, the initial phasing, the beta versions, and it just kind of snowballed from there that the content that was developed was what we wanted to see, and we just kept building upon that.
Yeah, and yes, Jennifer, totally in macro. We were able to do that over time and we were able to get through that. But I think we've also been able to hit a really great balance of transparency and of management of the micro for all of that stuff. So we use a particular online task management software. What we'll do is we've got a spreadsheet that says, okay, on our call day, which is Thursdays for SEH, we get together, we have all of these lists of requests. All right, well, how are we going to manage these? Some of these we're not quite ready to move forward on. Some of these we're ready to go. Some of them are in progress. Some of them are done. What is this information related to? Okay, so we can just set up a filter and find all of our pipe network information for like what are our active tasks, today's pipe network day. But by having this open collaborative spreadsheet, for lack of a better term, of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we're maintaining a pace on that, was the foundation for SEH to say, yes, this is a quality product. They did do the things that we asked them to do the way that they were asked to do it. And we can now verify how that's all been moving on. It's a really great communication tool. It's a great place to dump screenshots. Screenshots are lovely. I don't think anyone can take enough screenshots for like, this is the thing, this is what I want you to do, this is how I want you to do it. And that micro of this is one task, this is who's going to do it, this is all the information that we need for that task, really makes it easy to track and deliver that quality product. And if we do ever find an issue or a bug, it's really easy to go back and zoom in on where that happened, where that did go wrong. And what I think I don't know if you see this checklist very often, Jennifer, but our checklist for sending you over a fresh set of standards has really grown. I think it's like 3 or 4 pages now. It's a lot of screenshots, but like, hey, what did we do? Why didn't this work last time? Well, let's add that back to the checklist so that we make sure that it doesn't happen again. And generally speaking, it hasn't.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you know, going to the local setup was a little bit nerve-wracking for myself, but it's provided huge dividends. But just, you know, when I hit that button to synchronize that to all of the CAD users, that responsibility is really on me and ATG. And we haven't failed yet, so it's been good.
Yeah, and there's, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to ask you, what are some of examples of, I want to hear some wins that you guys had, some big hurdles, because I know everything, you think I mean, we all think, yeah, everything's going to work out perfectly. In the real world, it doesn't. You run into challenges, and I want to hear from you and Kyle, because you guys have a great relationship working. What are some of the biggest hurdles you guys overcame on the CAD management side?
Yeah, so typically it's technical things, technical issues we run into, because we develop this great workflow and we think it's all going to be good. And then Kyle and we get into development of how we want it to work, and bam, we hit a block wall. And, I think, Kyle, can you talk about the time when we ran into subassembly issues?
Yeah, and I'm going to try not to keep coming back to the training library, but I'm probably going to keep coming back to the training library. So with part of this local deployment, what Jennifer's talking about, various folks at ATG and some of our former subsidiary companies that have been brought into the ATG family have talked at Midwest University. It's a conference that used to be hosted by CTC, and ATG took that over a couple of years ago. Great deal. It's been hosted in Minnesota. We did it virtually this last year. And at Autodesk University, but how do you want to organize your content? And we have really leaned into the method of keeping things in a local deployment. So what that means is on my C drive and on Jeff's C drive, we grab a copy of the SEH standards, we tinker with the stuff that we need to tinker with, and then we send that whole thing over to Jennifer, and it lives on the servers at SEH. When she hits that button that says, give this back to everybody, it'll make a copy, it'll put it down on each individual's C drive. Well, there's certain things that we can't just stuff in a folder called like C/SEH CAD. That's actually CAD does for you guys. But we can't just put it in there because Civil 3D doesn't expect to find it there. We found that out the hard way with custom subassemblies. So Civil 3D really wants to look in some buried location in your program data folder. It's actually a hidden folder. You can't find it unless you have that box checked in your file explorer. So with that, we tried to put our custom subassemblies, the actual unzipped PKT files, in our C drive. And it worked great because we were able to click insert subassembly, build corridor, and we got the things that we were expecting. However, because it was not stored in that very specific location that Autodesk or that Civil 3D was looking for, we found out after we already deployed this to the users that it was taking minutes to rebuild, like 5 minutes just to rebuild a simple 1,000-foot 2-lane road with curb, sidewalk, and a daylight. Well, turns out Civil 3D really wants that stuff to go in your program data directory. So it took us some time. We troubleshooted it a little bit, and eventually we had to write a few extra lines of code in our distribution scripts to give this content back out to the users. Well, that content's going to live in your C drive deployment. It's going to have a home there, but we need to put it in program data where Civil 3D can find it, where it's expecting it to. And then we went back to standard rebuild times, and things were great. But yeah, that was a stressful month or 3 while we were trying to figure out, like, why is this taking so long?
Yeah, and we had users almost turning back of, well, I'm not, because this was between our two versions where we upgraded pretty much every 2 years is our cycle. And so we were kind of just onboarding new 2018 users at the time. And they're like, well, I'm just staying in the old software then. It works. I'm just staying there. And so until we figured it out and it was lightning fast, it was like, I'm just going to stay back here.
2016 or bust.
Well,
Yeah,
it
so
was an LDD going back there, right? Not that far back.
No, and we didn't have folks trying to go back to AutoCAD either, so that was nice.
Right.
But I don't know, Jennifer, I think broadly speaking, it's mostly bleeding edge stuff.
Yes.
That has, I don't want to say burned us, but we've walked into a few things, but walking into it with a square head on our shoulders and open communication, we're able to figure it out and find that place to move forward.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that's a great example. Do you have any others, Jennifer? Something else you guys
Well,
have worked on that was a huge hurdle?
Well, one
Yeah.
of the things that we've done, and it was kind of recently, was the legal description stuff. Now, that necessarily wasn't a win. It also wasn't a loss either. So the reason what happened was we were tasked with different, try to provide a little bit better way of doing legal descriptions for civil. That entitled me, I reached out to a lot of my friends at different surveying companies, asked them what they were doing. And they, of course, they were friends, so they were glad to share. And then I also asked our ATG civil team. So gathered some information and provided that info to Jennifer and the team, and at least they had something to look at. Granted, it wasn't the best answer, but at least we did the research and got them some information to go off of.
Yeah, sometimes there just isn't that easy button. So, really putting the research and development into, hey, Kyle, hey, Jeff, how are other people doing this? This is what we're really struggling with. We're struggling with this process. There's got to be an easy way. And sometimes there just isn't.
Yeah, that's a great example.
So Jennifer, we've talked about how your CAD management infrastructure works, and you've got a lot of representatives that are around places, but do you guys ever find yourself in a position where you're just like, we don't know what other people are doing. We don't know what we should do to proceed.
Yeah, and I think sometimes some of those requests that come into that master spreadsheet that we're managing, we look at them and we go, well, how are other people really doing this? Are they maintaining multiple standards? Are they bringing other things in? Are they adapting to that? And so just seeing that outside perspective, even though the ATG team doesn't tell me it's, such and such consultant, they know how they're doing it and they'll advise you in the best route for your workflow needs. So they see the industry trends. They see which way the industry is going. Are they using Dynamo to do this? Are they using the Sim Project Suite to do this? This process. How does it best work for everybody? And just that Autodesk software in general, how we use it to provide our product, definitely.
Yeah, and there have also been times too where Jeff and I and our coworkers, we see stuff and we can get that exposure. We can come up with, yeah, we see a lot of people do it that way. We like it the best if we do it this way. But ultimately, Jennifer, you and your team tell us what to do. We're working for you. So when it comes to what is the SEH way, might not be what we do for everybody else. Now, for the local deployment, I've yet to have a firm tell me, no, Kyle, we'd like to stick with a network deployment once we get that information in their hands. But there's a lot of things where I got to say, all right, well, I'm working with client B today. The client B method is a little different than I would normally do this. So we're there to listen to you. We're there to take your needs into effect and to do things the way that your firm needs them to be done.
And that's what our team does. We evaluate, when we're meeting, we kind of talk through the pros and cons of each approach. And then the team really makes the direction of, I think we should go this way. And it's good to have those background resources.
All right, well, I have one final question for you guys here, and this might be a tough one. Looking back to the beginning here, what's something you guys could not have imagined without the partnership that you had with ATG being able to get accomplished?
Yeah.
Might have stumped you on that one.
Right. There's so much that has evolved. It's it's both a compliment. A lot of times you don't hear from users if they're happy in their daily workflows, or if they're going rogue on you, you're not going to hear from them. And so when we ask users to go back and do a record drawing, say in an older version, and they have a big sigh of, oh, I have to do this. We really developed tool palettes, I think, Kyle, in between our 2 version releases, and that has really been instrumental. Tool palettes, they are endless resources for information, especially for company standards. The other thing is local drive setup, and not only because it would provide users in the field the resources that they need to open or reduce a survey or whatever it might be, no matter where you are, you have that set up on your computer. It really provided a light for us when COVID hit. We were able to transition all of our CAD users to working from home within less than a week's time. And without that local drive setup, I can't imagine things.
It would have been, I mean, you guys were well organized enough already that transferring that over to a local setup, yeah, there would have been startup times. The biggest problem with getting into the local is just making sure that you're well organized. What is my content? What do I need? Let's keep the stuff that we want to keep and flush the rest out. But I will say we've had the local setup was really great for getting to the work from home environment. We've had a lot of conversations about like install fatigue and how do we get when ATG when we and SCH when we all agree, okay, new public standards, let's get these out to the users. It's been a little bit more of a challenge than when we were back in the home environment or in the office environment, because now everybody has to VPN, a variety of internet connection quality and speeds across the company. But we're still capable of getting at least quarterly updates out to the user base with a pretty decent comfort level. But as far as actually working from home, I know I've been dealing with a number of different firms who are at home. They were using a VPN. They weren't happy with necessarily the refresh times. Like, oh, hey, I'm using a custom line type, a custom a font, a custom hatch pattern. Every time I want to use that with a network-based deployment, I have to connect to the VPN, and I have to wait. When I hit plot and go to choose my different color table, I have to wait for that command to go out via the VPN. I have to wait for it to come back via the VPN, and all of those seconds add up.
Yeah, so local drive setup and tool palettes would be my answer, Rob.
Got it. No, that's great. No, I appreciate it. As we're closing up here, if anyone has any other questions, and Jeff, while Kyle is pulling up a white paper he wanted to show everybody that talks about the CAD management, where to start and all that, if you could ask a question in there from Michael Brent.
Yeah, so Jennifer, this is to you. So were your standards and workflow developed for all areas such as architectural, civil design, and also does your company do transportation design?
Yes, so I would say our civil standards were pretty well documented and developed at the time. So we were just looking at maintaining that standard and really developing and enhancing our workflows. So the background data was kind of there, but we made a lot of process changes. So Kyle and team had done that throughout. Our Revit standards, not so much. They're working on really standardizing that approach right now. So they're working with all the disciplines within our company, which, it's not only architectural, it's the mechanical, structural groups, electrical groups as well. So they're working on creating a Revit template for all of those. We did incorporate into the Civil 3D standards, the landscape architecture and other users of Civil 3D, so just base users, and that's in those tool palettes. We do also do transportation. However, most of the DOTs, I guess WISDOT has their own standards. So we are in Wisconsin. We have a Wisconsin offices. We use the WISDOT standard there, which is Civil 3D. MnDOT in Minnesota uses Bentley products. So we have a separate group that works with that standard. And then we also do Colorado CDOT, and they're also on Civil 3D. So they kind of maintain, I would say the ATG team supports us as our Autodesk reseller, but our template development and our workflow development and CAD standards and management with Kyle and team is mostly centered around our civil template or our SDH specific projects.
Perfect. And can you expand on the local drive setup, general overview? And that's from Michael as well.
Yeah, this is an important one. We're hearing from a lot of clients. So,
and I'll tell you this, your system, even though I don't say who it is or show it off, has helped me talk to other companies and get them on board as well. So
yeah, so Kyle can probably highlight better.
I could share your guys' folder setup if you'd like, Jennifer. Or you're not.
Well, you certainly can. What we typically do is basically basically what Kyle and team puts together is basically we take this C drive setup, so all of our standards, all of our content, and we have a script that runs when users log into their machines, or now since we're at the work from home environment, it doesn't automatically launch, but it's a script that pushes all the content that would be hosted on a network location to the C drive of the person. So it hosts all of your SHX files, all of your tool palette content, all that sort of stuff. It goes right to the C drive of the computer. That synchronization script typically takes just a couple seconds to run at startup, and basically the user is able to use that as long as they have a connection to an Autodesk license from anywhere where they're at. It's run from your local computer.
Yeah, so what I've got here, folks, this is not SEH's setup. This is a kind of a demo data set I mentioned before. Some of our coworkers have presented on this at conferences. This is more or less that data set. So the script that we're using to manage this data is primarily just an abuse and a spamming of the robocopy command. There's a particular switch at the end of it called mirror, which is a pure synchronization. But that's what we're doing. And my analogy for this is you're going on vacation and you have a suitcase. When you leave your house, you have to take your socks out of your sock drawer and put them in the suitcase. Your toiletries, your shirts, all your pants, those all go in your suitcase. And then that suitcase goes into the trunk of your car or the airplane. That's the server. When this script runs to give that back to the users, it's like when you get to your hotel room. So you take your suitcase out of the car, you go into your hotel room, and then you say, all right, I'm going to take my socks and I'm going to put them in the new hotel room sock drawer. I'm going to take my toiletries, I'm going to put them in my hotel room bathroom. And that's what we're doing is we're bundling this all up, we're moving around as a bundle, and then we're redistributing it back to the places that it needs to go. Like our program data location for subassemblies. There's also a special location for custom coordinate systems and some of the rest of that stuff. But ultimately on your C drive, what you're going to find is a dedicated area just for your templates. So you can go in and you can find your sheet templates, your design template, your survey template, whatever else, maybe your international foot versus US foot. You've got another location for all of your plotting content. So it's gonna be your CTB files, your base sheet set. You've got another location for like line type files, hatch patterns, all that different kind of stuff, but it's all bundled up and it's all on a C drive. So you can access that. All you need is the license and power, and you get to use CAD 100% functionality for what your firm needs to see, from digital to paper.
And in addition to just being able to work from anywhere with that setup, as long as your synchronization is taking place, we have seen speed improvements as well, because it's not having to look to a network location. So that
even on site, this should be faster than a hard-lined network connection.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's what I like about this is the simplicity. It looks more complex when you look behind the scenes creating it, but it's very simple to use. And that's the whole point of it. It's simple and it's fast and efficient.
Yes.
So I can also try to make sure
this. We're just about out of time.
There. All right. So for anybody who's wondering, my firm is too small. my firm doesn't care about investing in CAD management. I'd like to direct you to the ATG website, atgusa.com. Under resources, you can find our white papers location. And it's been a minute, but what you're looking for is the workflow standards and CAD management. This is a roughly 20-page white paper that you can download and read through, but I go through how to see where you're at, how to make a plan for getting in management to help invest and to realize why it's important to do these things.
And it looks like he might have locked up here. Or he's just very surprised.
He is
Right.
really excited.
I can tell you the white paper
And then
will
once you've got
not
that
put-
culture of investment.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Sorry, go ahead, Jennifer. I'll hear what you had. I was there.
I'll
the whole
tell you
time.
the white paper will not put you to sleep. It was I actually read through it as well. And it was very useful information. This was put together after our partnership, but yes, Kyle, very good synopsis of what CAD management is.
And if you want the most effective strategy that I can say for just getting started, getting anything done, success breeds success. So there's a little graphic in here, but basically pick the low-hanging fruit, do the minimum amount of effort to get the maximum amount of return, get a couple of those early wins, and then you can start to convince your leadership and your management team, hey, we need to put a little more effort into this. It's not going to be as drastic of an improvement, but it's still really worthwhile. And then later on, once you get a well-functioning machine, you can start looking into that one practice group that has really weird needs. And it might take a while to get there, but like eventually we should help them out too and not leave them behind.
So Kyle,
start with the low-hanging fruit.
If you could, I'm going to close up at this point, but if you could put the link in the chat for those sticking around for that. And Jennifer, I want to thank you so much. I think this has been very informative. I know a lot of companies out there are looking to get started or just build upon what they have. And I hope this has helped out. It's been very informative for me as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. Any other final questions in here? And looks like he just posted that in there. Let us know. We'll stick around for a couple minutes in case any final questions. But if not, I appreciate everybody hopping on. Thank you. I'm interested in this trivia, Kyle. You're going to have to start bringing this up more.
Trivia? What trivia?
Yeah, the
You and
movie.
Zach.
You and Zach.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that part.
You
For
and
the
Zach just
meetings.
on Thursday mornings, you're just a hoot.
Well, I'm really glad we brought Zach in. Zach had a lot of passion, and he was a great addition to the team, and that shows a lot. And for anyone else who's still listening, if you're not passionate about it, it's going to be pretty hard to get a lot of this stuff done. So it takes a special type of masochist to sign up for this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's worth it.
Yeah,
And
it's
From
really
my perspective.
If I'm not wrong, during these meetings, occasionally we actually take a ruler and see how long your hair actually has grown.
Occasionally, yes. It's quite long these days. I don't know exactly how long it is. But I'm probably
waiting
looking
for the mullet there, Kyle.
when I go back to short hair, I want to be able to donate. So it's what, 10 inches, something along those lines.
Yep.
Yeah, you might end up with a buzz cut right now.
Yeah, I'm not quite ready for that.
All right. Well, I think that gives everybody enough time there. But once again, I thank everybody. And if you have any questions, just reach out to us. And Jennifer, can't thank you enough for your time.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Soon.
Thank you.